This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Well, President Donald Trump's preliminary peace agreement with Iran is drawing very strong support from American voters. According to a new Qantas survey, Trump signed the Memorandum of Understanding after the G7 meeting in Yvon-les-Bains, France, at the Palace of Versailles, while the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, signed remotely. The agreement puts a 60-day ceasefire and negotiation framework into effect, with both sides expected to work quickly towards a final deal. Under a preliminary agreement, the United States will lift the naval blockade of Iran, work with regional partners on reconstruction and economic development, and begin the process of ending sanctions. Iran, in return, has agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and reaffirm that it will not obtain or develop nuclear weapons. Already, ship tracking data shows that vessels moving through the Straits of Hormuz and American gas prices have fallen below $4 for the first time in months. And the public approves of this progress. Qantas found that 43% of Americans strongly approve of the peace agreement, while another 13% somewhat approve, while only 13% expressed disapproval. Trump celebrated the deal on Truth Social, declaring that oil is flowing again. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Markets are rising, job creation is strong, and prices are swiftly dropping. This is President Trump's patient approach, and it's paying off. President Trump used military pressure, economic leverage, and diplomatic speed to force Tehran to the table and reopen a vital energy corridor. This success shows that American leadership can stop wars, lower prices, and defend national security without surrendering strength. Now, I say we must stay vigilant to make sure that other foreign interests don't sabotage this peace deal for their own aims. Meanwhile, the Obama Presidential Center officially opened in Chicago, and the message from Michelle Obama shows how self-absorbed this broad-shouldered diva truly is. Asked by Good Morning America's Robin Roberts to describe the next chapter of their lives in one word, former President Barack Obama answered, fun. But Michelle Obama answered, me. Does that mean she's going to be a candidate for president? I've long thought that was a possibility. I thought she would be in the past. In fact, I thought she would have been the candidate after they dumped Joe Biden. But I think she wasn't quite ready yet. I wouldn't rule it out. The comment came as the long-delayed Obama Presidential Center opened its doors after years of planning, lawsuits, construction delays, and cost overruns. First announced as early as 2015 as a major investment in Chicago's South Side, the nearly 20-acre campus includes a museum, public spaces, athletic facilities, gardens, and exhibits devoted to defying the globalist false idol. The design kind of resembles the Death Star. It was meant to offend the senses in a gross example of cultural Marxism. I think it succeeded. The center faced major legal challenges over its location in historic Jackson Park, with opponents questioning the impact on public land. Some of those claims were later dismissed in federal court. As the opening ceremony, speakers included a land acknowledgement recognizing indigenous nations tied to the area in a nauseating display of virtue signaling. Elite progressives showed up to the opening of the center to celebrate themselves, playing lip service to social justice drivel, while Chicagoans still face crime, failing schools, high costs, and broken city services in their city that is being run off the rails by Democrats. But Michelle Obama doesn't care about the plight of the average person in Chicago. She's focused solely on self-aggrandizement and satiating her swollen ego. Perhaps Josh Hockett was onto something. We also had the story, which we've covered here extensively on the Stone Zone, about the fact that many black contractors, those involved in the construction of the Obama Center, have been stiffed. This is extraordinary because originally, you recall, we were told that this was going to empower the black community, but black contractors aren't having their bills paid, and many at this point are settling for pennies on the dollar if they can get paid at all. Many of them struggle to stay alive. It's really quite extraordinary, the hypocrisy that abounds regarding the entire Obama Center. Plus, if you've seen it, thing's hideous. It's hard to understand. Meanwhile, the Republican National Committee and the Georgia Republican Party are taking Fulton County, Georgia, and Gwinnett County, Georgia, to court, accusing local election officials of ignoring state law and weakening absentee ballot safeguards. The lawsuits, filed Thursday, allege that officials in the two Democrat-heavy counties created unauthorized absentee ballot drop-off locations and allowed voters to hand ballots directly to election workers for later transfer. Republicans say that those procedures go way beyond what Georgia law permits under SB 202, the Election Integrity Act, signed by Governor Brian Kemp back in 2021. The Republican National Chairman, Joe Gruder's good friend of mine, said that Georgia election law is written by elected legislators and not by unelected county bureaucrats, and those bureaucrats are compelled to follow the law or they should face consequences. Gruder's absolutely right. He warned that local boards cannot rewrite the rules by inventing new ballot collection systems or weakening the very security protections put into place by the state legislature. This lawsuit claims that Fulton and Gwinnett County tried to classify additional collection points as quote-unquote ballot bags, creating an unauthorized workaround opening the door to potential vote rigging. The Republican National Committee says that the policies restrict poll watcher access, they allow ballots to be collected outside of authorized times, and they permit workers to accept absentee ballots in ways that the state law simply does not allow. It sounds like the fraud blueprint that was used to fix the 2020 presidential election, in my opinion. The Republican National Committee's move to sue Georgia's counties show that they understand the paramount importance of election integrity. If we don't have honest and fair elections, what do we have? Ballots must be tracked, secured, and handled according to the same rules everywhere, not just adjusted county by county where officials dislike the law. Republicans are demanding that the court stop these practices and force compliance with Georgia election law. Every legal vote must count, and every ballot must also be protected. Confidence in elections depends on clear rules, equal enforcement, and accountability. Those not following the law must not only be sued, they must be thrown behind bars as a way to create a deterrent against that exact sort of behavior. I have grave concerns about the integrity of the elections. One of the great tragedies is that Tulsi Gabbard essentially left the office of the Director of National Intelligence before completing her investigation of the 2020 elections, both the electronic voting machines and whether they are secure, whether they have any integrity, as well as the paper ballots that seem to pop up at 3 o'clock in the morning in 3 different states all at the same time after the Republican observers had been forced from the scene. So it is a huge concern. I'm not yet convinced about 2020, nor am I convinced that we'll have a fair election in 2026. Meanwhile, Washington, D.C. has chosen a Democratic socialist as its next likely mayor, and this result shows how extremely leftism is gaining traction in cities nationwide. Janice Lewis George defeated a more moderate Democrat by running hard on anti-Trump resistance and promises of sweeping government actions to solve problems for city residents. Those poor schmucks will now be led on a primrose path towards destruction. Georgia's victory follows similar left-wing wins in New York City, as we know, as well as Seattle, showing how younger urban voters and public sector unions are pushing America's major cities further to the left. Lewis George built a powerful coalition of labor unions, local socialists, and progressive activists. Her campaign focused less on public safety and more on rent, child care, and cost of living anger. Candidate George's left-wing demagoguery connected with the public in a city frustrated after 3 terms of low IQ Muriel Bowser that has been rattled by federal workforce cuts and other problems. But campaign slogans are about to meet reality, you see. Washington faces a major budget gap, unemployment above 6%, slowing population growth, empty federal offices, and a downtown economy that needs private investment, not socialist meddling. Already, the new mayor, Lewis George, appears to be moderating some promises, including questions about a wealth tax and whether universal child care can happen immediately in D.C. D.C. voters may want affordability, but higher taxes, bigger bureaucracy, and anti-business policies make everything worse and only exacerbates the existing problems. By moving in the National Guard, Donald Trump brought crime down sharply. Even Democrat Mayor Muriel Bowser was forced to admit it. Most folks of common sense need to understand that when leaders fail to control costs, crime, and schools, voters can succumb to radical promises. It's kind of like the hope and change thing. The only path forward is by embracing populism. Stale, weak republicanism is hated by the masses and will get steamrolled by better organized leftists. Only through MAGA and an outsider populist agenda can we reverse our national downslide. So I say they double down on what President Trump has created, and we should crush these Marxists for good in the upcoming elections. Meanwhile, the United States Senate has passed a rare, unanimous message that Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party must be held accountable. On June 16th, the U.S. Senate approved a resolution condemning Xi for deceit, undermining peace and security, and orchestrating crimes against humanity. The measure also urges the U.S. government to use every available tool, including global Magnitsky sanctions against Chinese Communist Party officials responsible for these human rights abuses and corruption. My own Florida Senator Rick Scott introduced a resolution called Xi and the Chinese Communist Party, the greatest threat to America's way of life, prosperity, and global peace. He accused the regime of lying, cheating, stealing, exploiting slave labor, committing genocide, and abusing its own people. The resolution cites Beijing's role in covering up the early COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan, misleading the world about the virus, and using international bodies to spread falsehoods. It also points to China's role in the fentanyl crisis, which is continuing, despite Xi's repeated promises to help stop the flow of the precursor chemicals used to make fentanyl. Senators further accused the regime of trade cheating, intellectual property theft, cyber attacks, espionage, and operating secret police activity on American soil. The resolution, again supported by all 100 senators, also highlights decades of brutality, from Tiananmen Square's massacre to the persecution of Falun Gong practitioners, forced organ harvesting allegations, and ongoing repression of dissidents. It's worth noting that the Chinese people are not America's enemy. The communist regime that rules them, however, is, and it is a greater threat that must be confronted. America must stand for what is right, punish authoritarian abuses, and never operate under the guise that Xi is just a normal partner or some kind of small d Democrat. China can never be the preeminent world power they wish to be. That would be a death sentence for global freedom. But it is China that is the greatest threat to American democracy. It is China that is the greatest threat to our freedoms. It is China that is buying up the ranch land, the farmland. So much of our American real estate is China that is the greatest danger to this country. And those who blame Richard Nixon because he's the one who opened the door to China and normalized our relations with them don't really understand history. You see, when Nixon opened the door to China, it was a dirt poor, backwards, agrarian society. It wasn't until Bill Clinton gave China most favored nation trading status that they became the economic and then therefore the military powerhouse in danger that they are now. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back with more political news on the other side.